The lesson of empathy with others. One thing all people can appreciate is the ability of others to identify with and understand their particular life situation, problem, unusual experience, or suffering. Whether it's spending time in the hospital and having the doctors and nurses understand the pain you're having, or deal with a death or a disaster, and having a sensitive friend know just what you're feeling as you battle through the pressure. It is reassuring when others can empathize with you. And that is another valuable purpose for suffering, to enable us to help others in their suffering. In the opening verses of his second letter to the Corinthians, Paul said that God comforts us in all our affliction, so that we will be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 4. Sometimes God's reason for allowing trials and suffering to come our way is so we may be able to minister better later on to others who are suffering. Also in Hebrews, we learn that Jesus exemplifies one of the purposes for suffering. Through his own testings and sufferings as the perfect man, Jesus, as our high priest, is able to sympathize with our weaknesses and sufferings. Chapter 2, verse 18, and chapter 4, verse 15. He revealed his empathy to Peter during the Last Supper. "Simon, Simon, behold, Satan has demanded permission to sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you, that your faith may not fail, and you, when once you have turned again, strengthen your brothers." Luke chapter 22, verses 31 through 32. The lesson of enduring strength. Finally, I believe God allows trials and sufferings to develop in us enduring strength for greater usefulness. The Puritan Thomas Manton once said, "While all things are quiet and comfortable, we live by sense rather than faith. But the worth of a soldier is never known in times of peace." The truth of that statement has been borne out many times through the history of military conflict, including America's experience with high-tech equipment during the Persian Gulf War. When the United States built up its forces in the Gulf region in late 1990 to meet the challenge of the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, questions arose as to how various sophisticated missiles would perform in actual combat situations. These weapons had been experimentally tested only during the previous decade, but the United States had not been involved in a major war, Vietnam, in nearly 20 years. However, much to the relief and satisfaction of military and civilian leaders, the Patriot and cruise missiles performed brilliantly during the Gulf conflict. Those weapons could not have been tested to their full worth under training conditions. The pressure of real battlefield conditions and genuine enemy opposition is what allowed the military to test the missiles' reliability and effectiveness. Conversely, intense warfare situations also reveal defects in equipment or shortcomings in how troops perform. Based on these observations, improvements can be made. Likewise, the Christian life is a constant warfare. John chapter 17, verses 9 through 19, and Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 18. God places us in difficult life situations to refine us and help us grow. John chapter 15, verses 1 through 2. As we move from one trial to another, our spiritual muscles are exercised and strengthened and become more useful. This whole process builds our spiritual endurance, which makes us all the more effective in future ministry. Remember what the Apostle James taught. "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." Chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. The Lord sends trials and sufferings into the Christian's life for various reasons and purposes. Everything from strengthening our faith to reminding us of our heavenly hope to developing enduring strength for greater usefulness may be involved. And God sometimes uses more than one of these purposes at the same time. As we noted at the beginning of the chapter, God is sovereign, and He uses all these worthwhile purposes within the scope of His larger plan for us. Knowing the wonderful truths in this chapter regarding God's use of trials, sufferings, and persecutions is a comfort. But it is only one aspect of our study. There's still another side to the coin, the difficult and troublesome aspect of application. The practical question that remains is, I know I should triumph through the recognition of God's sovereign purposes in this trial, but what is the path to that triumph? I'm willing, but how? And further, what qualities of mind and emotion are helpful and necessary as I face the situation? The remainder of this book will seek to provide scriptural answers to those questions. We'll begin by looking at some great role models and how they endured suffering in a godly manner.